our border would be immoral, and that doing nothing to stop the devastation and destruction of American lives, refusing to build that border wall, is somehow perversely moral. The radical Dems, who claimed that they would negotiate in good faith after the government shutdown had ended, have lied and lied and lied again, as they have always lied about border security. Nancy Pelosi today telling her negotiators and the American people the radical Dems are dead set against building the wall.
I hope that any shutdown would be taken off the table as a reasonable approach to governance. As an appropriator, I take pride in the ability of the appropriations members to reach consensus left to their own devices without any other interference. There's not going to be any wall money in the legislation.
No wall money. The president, of course, sees through Pelosi and Schumer's hollow words, their refusals to put national security ahead of their partisan politics. Mr. Trump says it plainly. No wall, no deal.
If there's no wall, it doesn't work. She's just playing games. So if there's no wall, it doesn't work. I'm not waiting for this committee. And I've told a lot of people I don't expect much coming out of the committee because I keep hearing the words that we'll give you what you want, but we're not going to give you a wall. And the problem is, if they don't give us a wall, it doesn't work. People are coming in, drugs are coming in, human trafficking is coming in, which is so horrible. Things are happening that won't happen after the wall is constructed.
The president on the border security crisis and building the wall. Vice President of the U.S. Border Patrol Council, Hector Garza, joins us tonight. He knows exactly how critical the wall is, as does top Republican strategist Ed Rollins, Washington Times columnist Tammy Bruce, radio talk show host Mark Simone. Also, after 2 days of trade talks with China, the Trump administration says the discussions are going in the right direction, but the outcome is far from assured. President Trump says there will not be a deal at all until he and Chinese President Xi Jinping meet face to face.
We want to make it comprehensive. We want to make a deal that we can look at and be proud of for many years, not where we have to go back and renegotiate or we left things out. So whether it's intellectual property or whether it's any of the other things that we discuss all the time, we want to try, would you say, have everything included. We want to have it very comprehensive.
And across America, the deadly frigid temperatures continue to wreak havoc on the Midwest. The cold weather already killing a dozen people, thousands left without power. The dangerous polar vortex made all the more dangerous by the vulnerability of our power utilities to cyber attack. The U.S. intelligence community publicly warning that U.S. systems are vulnerable and that Russia and China now have the capability of attacking our utility networks and systems and could use harsh weather against the American people. We'll take that up, all of this and much more in our show tonight. Our top story, the ongoing crisis at our southern border and the president's singular efforts to build the wall. President Trump slammed the congressional ineffectiveness, saying that without a border wall, he won't accept a border deal of any kind. The president rightly acknowledging that without a wall, the border is wide open to billions of dollars in drug smuggling, sex trafficking, and illegal immigration. President Trump also called out the radical Dems for saying that a border wall is, quote, immoral.
The problem is the Democrats, when they say we don't want to build, as an example, we don't want to build a wall because it doesn't work or because it's immoral. Well, it's also immoral, the people that come into our country that shouldn't be here and kill people. That's immoral, too. That's a lot more immoral. What I think is the worst sin of all is the fact that we're allowing people to come into this country and sell drugs and human traffic and do all of these horrible things, that if we had the simplicity of a well-constructed, beautiful barrier or wall, they wouldn't be able to come into our country. That, to me, is the great sin.
The president's comments couldn't have come at a more appropriate moment. The U.S. Border Patrol this past Saturday conducted the largest seizure of fentanyl in U.S. history. Border Patrol agents in Arizona found 254 pounds of fentanyl with a street value of $3.5 million and the capacity to kill 57 million Americans. President Trump now forced to consider declaring a national emergency to build a wall on the border, with the continued inaction from our national lawmakers, the radical Dems, ignoring a national security and humanitarian crisis, drugs, human trafficking, gang violence, all plaguing our southern border. Joining us now, the Vice President of the U.S. Border Patrol Council, Hector Garza. Hector, good to have you with us. It is extraordinary to hear a president having to explain to the American people what a national crisis the border represents, now porous, wide open to every kind of illegal smuggling that one could imagine, with devastating effect on our society. Your thoughts on his voice seemingly rising alone in our nation's capital to raise the alarm?
Well, President Trump is right when he says that we need to do more on the border. And we need to do more on the border, both at ports of entry and in between ports of entry. We saw this apprehension of fentanyl at a border crossing that could kill millions of Americans. Now, just a couple of weeks ago, we saw over 700 pounds of cocaine in the Rio Grande Valley coming in between ports of entry. Yesterday, we saw a load of meth coming through the border in Ajo, Arizona. Mm-hmm. So clearly the war on drugs is not over. And we appreciate that President Trump wants to do more.
Yeah, the war is not over. I mean, for crying out loud, we have seen since 1989, Clear and Present Danger, Tom Clancy's book in 1989, we have seen the amount, the explosion of deadly drugs crossing that border, 10 times as much as then. We've spent the DEA is spending $57 billion on its own to watch it grow 10 times. We are not fighting a war. I've got to believe, and I want to get your sense of this, the corruption has to be on both sides of that border, but this country continues to act like it's only on one side. We know better, don't we?
Well, clearly we know that the Mexican is a very corrupt country. Mexico is a very corrupt country. Definitely we have to do more. We have to build those physical barriers so that we can stop those dangerous drugs. Now, we're seeing all these caravans that are coming across. Those are distractions because those people want to get caught. But we have to remember that there's a lot of drugs that are coming across in between ports of entry that are coming across undetected. And we're also getting those dangerous criminals coming across.
You mean between the ports of entry?
Exactly, between the ports of entry. So those are the ones that we also have to worry about.
You know,
now,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, now the ports of entry have a lot of infrastructure, technology, and manpower. And what's interesting about ports of entry is that the port director pretty much dictates the flow of traffic. The same thing does not happen along the border. Drug cartels dictate what type of traffic comes across. If you see at Yuma, Arizona, we saw over 300 illegal aliens coming across with only 4 border patrol agents being out there. Now, those border patrol agents had to come in, process those people, and now that border was left wide open. Who knows what came across?
Yeah. You know, one of the most stunning statements I've heard from someone who stuns me all the time, and that's Nancy Pelosi, talking about 90% of the drugs are captured at our ports of entry. And I hear that sort of repeated. The fact of the matter is 90% of the drugs that are captured at the ports of entry because that's where we have infrastructure, as you say, and we have guards. No one knows how much is flowing between the hundreds of miles between those ports of entry. We know it is a vast and deadly amount of drugs. We know that the majority of methamphetamines, marijuana, heroin, cocaine, fentanyl, the deadliest of the bunch, all are crossing that border, and most is crossing between the ports of entry, not through the ports of entry. And when she says that, she is trying to talk down a wall. It's stunning to me that anyone who is, and particularly the Speaker of the House, would lie to the American people, bald-faced, and then say it's immoral to talk about a wall. Your thoughts, Hector?
Well, you have to think about this, Lou, is that drug cartels control the Mexican side of the border. They control the ports of entry on the Mexican side, and they control the Mexican part of in between the ports of entry. Now, they dictate. There's a lot of drugs coming across. That there's enough of drugs coming across in the ports of entry and in between the ports of entry. So we have to make sure that we do build that wall, and we do build those physical barriers. We have to work on the retention issue as well with Border Patrol agents. Right now, the Border Patrol is understaffed by 2,000 Border Patrol agents. So we have to do something to make sure that we have enough manpower so that we can stop those drugs, so that we can address the humanitarian crisis on the border.
Hector Garza, thanks for being with us. We appreciate it. Come back soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Lou.
Hector Garza. Still ahead, another day of the left-wing national media hitting the president for his comments on the intelligence community this time.
You are seeing repeatedly, the intelligence chiefs in this country separating from the president.
It's very dispiriting if the work that you're doing is not being appreciated.
It blows my mind, frankly. I worked for presidents that actually were interested in knowing what was going on.
We need to stop saying that Donald Trump is taking a position different than them and just need to start saying the truth, which is Donald Trump is adopting Vladimir Putin's position.
Who is that fellow? We take that up later with the Daily Caller's Luke Rosiak. Up next, our friend Paul Ryan making some promises to President Trump about a border wall. A Ryan promise. The guy I can't stand. But we're going to talk about him anyway because the president did as well. We'll have that and much more right after the break with Ed Rollins. Stay with us. President Trump taking up the issue of Paul Ryan, saying lame duck Speaker Paul Ryan had promised to fund the border wall last year. In an interview with the Daily Caller, President Trump said this, quote, I was going to veto the 28 omnibus bill, and Paul Ryan told me in the strongest of language, please don't do that. We'll get you the wall. And then he went lame duck. I was very disappointed in Paul, as any American should be. He never once was working in the national interest, only his and that of the globalist elites and the establishment lobbyists on K Street. Well, joining me now, former Reagan White House political director, Fox Business political analyst, Ed Rollins. Ed, I guess you have to be just terribly shocked to hear that Paul Ryan was a liar on top of everything else.
Well, it's especially because this president, when he gave his commitment to what he would do it. And I think to a certain extent, when the speaker tells you he's going to get something and you sign a bill that you didn't want to sign, which was a terrible bill to begin with.
He hated that bill.
And he should have hated it, that you expected something back. Well, not only was it not coming back, he never made an effort. They could have got this bill through. They could have had this wall 7 months ago. And Ryan never believed in it. Ryan's legacy is he's going to go down as the worst speaker in history who took the Republicans over the cliff.
Yeah, but there's another part to this, and that is the Republican conference who permitted him to do so.
I agree.
I still do not understand, and I have been working for months to figure it out. And I've gotten some explanations from various congressmen and congresswomen, but no one seems to have a rational explanation for why they accepted this fool as a lame duck speaker for 9 months.
It's a club, and to a certain extent, the interesting thing is Nancy Pelosi and her new rules has eliminated the ability to vacate the chair, which is what members should have done. One member could stand up. And
we should point out what that means. Say again.
Any single member could stand up any day and say, I want to vacate the chair, which then you had a vote on whether the speaker should be there. And of course, that's what Ryan didn't want, and obviously.
And not one person in the Republican Party had the guts to stand up and call the motion and make the motion to vacate the chair in 9 months.
Well, the reality is it's a painful lesson for the president, but he certainly has drawn the line in the sand today. He doesn't get a wall, they're not going to get a bill.
Well, and is there any, in your judgment, any reason in the world why he should not call that emergency? I mean, we talk about this border. The American people see what's happening. What is astonishing is the national left-wing media is in trying to deny there's an emergency. They're not just simply ignoring the crisis, they're denying the crisis as it unfolds before our very eyes, as young men and women die of fentanyl and opiate overdoses every every day and night in this country, in every community. It is astonishing. And then people say there's no emergency.
Well, there is an emergency, and the gentleman who's on before, the border security people, and everyone you have on here, say we need this wall. To do our job, we need this wall.
You know, if you want to know how big an emergency we've got at the border, talk to anyone who is an EMT, who is a paramedic, who is transporting these young people, primarily young people, to hospitals each and every night. It is, and this country is accepting 70,000 over. I mean, put that in context. It's almost 40% more than all of the Americans who died in Vietnam, for God's sake.
It's a war zone, and innocent people are being killed every day by the cartels. And at the end of the day, we need to build that wall to stop it.
And by the way, as far as I'm concerned, there ought to be an investigation of the Chamber of Commerce, the Business Roundtable, the Koch brothers, for an explanation as to what they're doing with their money and why they are supporting death and devastation, because it is their money that is bankrolling this act of denial on the part of both the left and the right, both political parties in this country.
Cheap labor. That's what it is. It's cheap labor.
Yeah, it sure is hell cheap politics.
Well, the president just needs to stay tough here and tell the Democrats to learn how to get 2/3 of the vote if you want to override his veto, because they're not going to make it.
Well, once again, we can thank God for this president.
Absolutely.
A lone voice talking sense, and people acting like, really? An emergency on our border? Who would have thought? Just with thousands and tens of thousands of deaths. Ed Rollins, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We'd like to hear your thoughts on all of this. Share your comments. Follow me on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Like me on Facebook. Follow me on Instagram at Lou Dobbs Tonight. Yes, even the haters, I'd like to hear from you as well. I'd like to understand how you can stand yourself denying the crisis this nation faces. Well, turning to the thousands of Central American migrants boarding buses in Mexico City headed towards the border. We'll have more on the border crisis with the Washington Examiner's Jenna Ellis. But before we go to break, let's take a look at the U.S. national debt. If you thought we had all of our problems solved, we're so close, aren't we? Here's one that is going to be with us for a while, almost $22 trillion in national debt, over just about $67,000 per person, per taxpayer, almost $180,000. We're coming right back. The good news is waiting for us on the other side. Stay with us. Thousands of Central Americans boarding buses today in Mexico City, and they are headed, you know where they're headed, to the U.S. border. Some 12,000 of them applying for special visas that would allow them to travel openly in Mexico. President Trump today vowed to put a stop to it. He tweeted this: more troops being sent to the southern border to stop the attempted invasion of illegals through large caravans into our country. We've stopped the previous caravans, and we will stop these also. With a wall, it would be so much easier and less expensive being built. Joining us tonight, Jenna Ellis, contributor to the Washington Examiner, 2020 Trump surrogate, attorney, director of public policy at the James Dobson Family Institute. I said all of that. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
And you're a busy person, so we doubly appreciate your time. Let's start with, first of all, these caravans that are being shipped, the troops that we've had to send to the border. Get your reaction to whether this president will have any problem at all in declaring a national emergency without border wall funding.
Well, from a constitutional law perspective, this ultimately is about what powers are vested in the executive office. And so with the National Security Act, what Congress has done is given to the executive the ability to declare a national emergency. We are currently under 31 national emergencies. And so this is something that the president absolutely has the power to do.
Let's put up for the audience the Title 10 U.S. Code on this issue that is declaring a national emergency. In the event of a declaration of war or the declaration by the president of a national emergency in accordance with the National Emergencies Act that requires use of the armed forces, the Secretary of Defense may undertake military construction projects, and on it goes. So this is pretty clear. Now the prospects that, let's say, the Ninth Circuit could intervene and stop the president cold. I've heard absolute division on whether or not they would have that power or the possibility of interrupting the president in the act of securing the nation.
And they shouldn't. And the reason that the Ninth Circuit is such a controversial circuit right now is because of the nationwide injunction problem. And what this does is allows leftist activists or anyone really to forum shop.
Because the Ninth Circuit Court is the most left-wing court in the land,
and the
appellate court.
And the reason is because Presidents Carter, Clinton, and Obama have appointed the most judges to that federal circuit. And originally, our founding fathers intended the judicial branch just to act as essentially umpires. They can say what powers Congress and the executive can do. They don't get into the policy or political questions of what they should do.
And as the story keeps progressing, Kamala, I'm told is the correct pronunciation for Senator Harris, and Dianne Feinstein are all upset because the president has chosen apparently 3 folks, conservatives all, to go on the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeal, which would upset the club mightily.
Right, and this is why our vote as Americans matter, and this is why we need to care what candidates we support. We need to care about understanding what constitutional conservatism is, because a president, regardless of what party they're from, regardless of how they were elected, what happens is that the president, under Article 2, has nomination authority. And so it doesn't matter whether or not they like them. That's the political question. What matters is that the president constitutionally can nominate with advice and consent of the Senate. And what President Trump is doing is creating nominations, and he has 51 that he's renominated under the new Congress, and 4 currently on the Ninth Circuit.
He is the most resisted president in history in his judicial nominations, and it is an extraordinarily sad and dark moment in American history that this is occurring.
And it's all political rather than understanding the legitimate obligation of government, which is to preserve and protect our God-given rights for the family and for the individual. And so what the president is doing is appointing conservative originalists. That doesn't mean Republican or Democrat.
Right, we know what it means.
But some people don't though. So, and that's the problem.
Not in this audience, Jenna.
But we need to do a better job.
You're talking to the smartest audience in
television.
A better
job of doing that.
Jenna Ellis, good to have you with us.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Up next, the Trump administration revealing new plans for high-skilled immigrants hoping to obtain H-1B visas. The outsourcers are having a fit. Could it be that this actually is a smart plan on immigration? It goes into effect in April. It would give immigrants with master's degrees from U.S. universities top priority in the H-1B visa general lottery. Lotteries, not such a grand idea. The U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services say the new rules will help more than 5,000 high-skilled immigrants be selected for those visas. A good thing. Up next, the crippling cold keeping much of the Midwest in a deep freeze that is deadly. Chuck Schumer wants intervention for the president. We'll have more on the call by the Senate Minority Leader for a coup. Has Schumer lost his mind? Should we intervene? I think for the good of the Republic, we should consider that, don't you? We'll have more on that with the Daily Caller's Luke Rosiak. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
The old crew. Remember when we all used to go to the cafeteria and just chow down midday?
You mean like lunch?
Come on. Voted most likely to help people save $668 when they switch?
At this school?
Didn't you get caught in the laminating machine?
Box, have a great summer, Danielle. Oh, Danielle, control yourself.
I'd like to slow it down here with a special discount for a special girl. Danielle, this one's for you.
Here's a question. Was it necessary to create a luxury car more teched out than Silicon Valley? With a cockpit fit for a spaceship. Hang on. Radar that senses things the human eye can't. Busted. Hey, Mom. And the ability to make 1,000 decisions before you even make one. Was all this really necessary? What do you think?
I can do more to lower my A1C.
Because my body can still make its own insulin.
And I take Trulicity once a week. to activate my body to release it, like it's supposed to. Trulicity is not insulin. It starts acting in my body from the first dose and continues to work when I need it, 24/7.
Trulicity is an injection to improve blood sugar in adults with type 2 diabetes when used with diet and exercise. Don't use it as the first medicine to treat diabetes or if you have type 1 diabetes or diabetic ketoacidosis. Don't take Trulicity if you or your family have medullary thyroid cancer, you're allergic to Trulicity, or have multiple endocrine neoplasia syndrome type 2. Stop Trulicity and call your doctor right away if you have symptoms of a serious allergic reaction, a lump or swelling in your neck, or severe stomach pain. Serious side effects may include pancreatitis. Taking Trulicity with a sulfonylurea or insulin increases your low blood sugar risk. Common side effects include nausea, diarrhea, vomiting, abdominal pain, and decreased appetite. These can lead to dehydration, which may worsen kidney problems.
I choose once weekly Trulicity to activate my within.
If you need help lowering your A1C, ask your doctor about once weekly Trulicity.
It's hard to get all the daily fiber we need from food alone. That's why I love Fiber Choice. With the fiber found in many fruits and vegetables. Fiber Choice, #1 GE recommended chewable prebiotic fiber. Find it in the digestive aisle.
Pretty sure that's discovery. No, just a sec.
What would it look like if we listened more? Could the right voice, the right set of words, bring us all just a little closer? Get us to open up, even push us further. It could, if we took the time to listen. The most inspiring minds, the most compelling stories. Download Audible and listen for a change.
Get new floors during Empire Today's gigantic 75% off sale. That's carpet, laminate, and even hardwood 75% off. Empire makes getting beautiful new floors easy. See samples in your home, get a free estimate, and have your floors professionally installed. Update your floors with Empire and get 75% off carpet, laminate, and hardwood. Schedule now.
800-588-2300 Empire.
Today. Headlines we're looking at tonight. Painfully cold weather continues to grip the Midwest, leading to the deaths now of at least 13 people. Chicago bracing for temperatures of 21 below zero. President Trump meeting with Chinese Vice Premier Liu He in the Oval Office. The Vice Premier saying China will buy 5 million tons of soybeans per day from the United States. President Trump adding he will meet with Chinese President Xi Jinping to finalize a deal he hopes in the very near future. And after President Trump labeled his intelligence community passive and naive, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer is now calling for an outright coup against the commander-in-chief. He tells intelligence leaders to, quote, stage an intervention. Rhino Senator John Thune also critical of the president's comments. He wrote, now imagine this. This is Mr. Milquetoast himself, who has, as far as I've been able to determine, not had an original thought in his head throughout his career, saying, quote, I prefer the president would stay off Twitter, particularly with regard to these important national security issues, end quote. Well, my goodness, Senator Thune, we should all stop and ponder your call for the president to lose his direct connection to the American people. Good grief. Well, joining me now, Luke Rosiak, investigative reporter at the Daily Caller. Great to have you with us, Luke. And
good to be with you, Lou.
I'm reading this really fascinating book called Obstruction of Justice, How the Deep State Risks National Security to Protect the Democrats. There it is, written by Luke Rosiak. Congratulations on the new book.
Thank you.
And we want to recommend it to all our viewers here and listeners as well. This is just terrific. It is, to me, it is mind-boggling how little attention the national media would give the issue that you focus on in obstruction of justice.
It really was a surreal experience reporting it out, because here we see every day a collusion in Russia, and it's been 2 years. No one can tell us who colluded with what to do what. You know, and meanwhile, the whole time it turns out that there's this Pakistani guy on the House network who is taking money from an Iranian government minister tied to Hezbollah. He's sending government devices over to Pakistan, and he's impersonating an intelligence staffer. And so the officials know all of this. They bust the guy, and Nancy Pelosi steps in and deceives the American people, retaliates. They cover the whole thing up very deliberately, and the wool is pulled over the eyes of the American people so that they can trot out this Russian narrative. And it's really blown my mind. I mean, we knew about these problems in the DOJ and the FBI. So we knew how beholden they were to Democrats, but this book shows exactly how they do it.
Where the heck are the brothers? I'm sure they're in prison for a substantial portion of their lives. That Debbie Wasserman Schultz and the Democrats are in deep, even tragic apology to the American people. Where are they?
So they were never even charged with the crimes, despite the massive amount of evidence laid out in my book. They hired a Clinton lawyer, and the FBI started working as their defense attorneys. And so my book documents, and this book, by the way, names names. I mean, it talks about people in the DOJ down to the rank and file agents who are doing what as they deliberately rig this case. And so these guys are out free, probably running around in Pakistan with the millions of dollars that they funneled from Congress over to Pakistan.
One of the claims that you make in the book, that Nancy Pelosi framed the House's top internal investigator to cover up the Awan scandal. Why has there been no consequence for that?
And this book was so revealing to me to report this out as far as Pelosi being in charge of the House. I mean, the House Inspector General was originally appointed by Nancy Pelosi. She uncovers the hack by this Pakistani, and Pelosi's operatives falsely accuse her of ethics charges. They actually accuse her of colluding with a foreign government.
You said they falsely accused her?
They falsely accused the investigator of colluding with a foreign government of Malaysia. It's a bizarre story. And so they drive her out on fake ethics charges. Nancy Pelosi's daughter said a couple weeks ago, I don't know if you remember, this is the kind of woman that will cut your head off and you won't even know you're bleeding. And my book details exactly how Nancy Pelosi is smarter, is more cutthroat, is clever. She lies, she manipulates, and she runs circles around the Republicans. They don't even know what hit them.
Well, Republicans don't know what hit them nearly every time because they're so used to being hit. I mean, look at this nonsense with the FBI sending, 27 vehicles, tactical teams, SWAT teams, after Roger Stone, doing all of the same nonsense against Michael Cohen, for crying out loud, Paul Manafort. It looks like the FBI only pulls these stunts against Republicans and won't even investigate a Democrat.
Absolutely. And in my book about Imran Awan, the Pakistani guy, his own wife, the suspect's own wife, went to the FBI and said, this is a guy who told me he was a mole in Congress and that he knows so much about congressmen that he'll never get in trouble. She went to the FBI and said, he's currently blackmailing me. He's got my house wiretapped. He was blackmailing his wife, and she begged the FBI to do something. And the FBI actually stood in front of this woman's door to make sure she couldn't go to the bogus hearing where they actually made fun of Donald Trump in court and didn't charge this guy with anything. The whole time the FBI is keeping the witness from telling the judge what actually went on.
Luke, we want to congratulate you on the book. The title is Obstruction of Justice, How the Deep, let's put that up, How the Deep State Risks National. This is, I'm going to put you in my nominee list for longest subtitles, How the Deep State Risks National Security to Protect the Democrats. Obstruction of Justice. Luke, great to see you. We recommend the book to you highly. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Luke.
Up next, how the leader of a House committee tried to remove God from the oath witnesses prior to their testimony. Stay with us for that. The Washington Times' Tammy Bruce, radio talk show host Mark Simone. Join me right after this quick break. Stay with us. On Wall Street, stocks closing mixed. The Dow up 15 points, the S&P up 23. The Nasdaq up 99, volume on the big board 4.8 billion, but those moves were enough to assure the best January performance for the Dow and the S&P 500 in 30 years. Crude oil, $54 a barrel, not bad, holding steady. Gold and silver up nearly 1%, and copper, I don't want to talk about copper. And Americans continue to win under President Trump. Workers' wages and salaries up 3% in the fourth quarter of last year. That is the biggest gain in pay in the third quarter since 2008. And a reminder to listen to my reports 3 times a day, coast to coast, on the Salem Radio Network. A group of congressional Dems failing to remove a reference to God from their committee. This is extraordinary. The radical Dems are out of their minds. And amongst the most radical of those radical Dems, Natural Resources Committee Chairman Raul Grijalva proposing to remove the phrase, "so help you God," from witness oaths before the committee. Only after the measure failed did the chairman, admit it was all just such a terrible mistake. Golly, I can't imagine a man with his left-wing leanings making a mistake, or at least admitting any. Joining us tonight, WR radio personality Mark Simone. Mark, good to see you. Tammy Bruce, Washington Times columnist, Fox Business contributor. Tammy, great to see you.
Hi there.
I mean, what do you make of what's going on with the left? I mean, the left, what's separating them from being communists right now?
Well, not much. They're the party of Karl Marx, aren't they? So the same party now that is moving infanticide, of course they want to remove references to God in pledges. But this is not new. We know they tried to do that in the 2012 Democratic Convention, which shocked people. There was a big floor fight, a very big vocal crowd trying to push to remove references to God in the platform, the Democratic platform. It took a long time for them to maneuver out of that. This is a reminder to the American people that this is not about policies. These people do not care about the country. This is a very different dynamic than they intend to move it through, and it is the antithesis of what Americans in general want. They lie, they're grifters, and this finally is showing us clearly who they really are.
Well, I think when you don't want any reference to God, but you're fine with Chuck Schumer in the proceeding, there's something wrong there also.
So help me, Chucky.
Yeah, they just want to strip away everything we know. You know, it used to be a men's room, ladies' room. Now it's 37 different doors. I don't know what to do anymore. You could be 9 genders. It's styrofoam is banned in New York. They just want to eliminate everything.
It is a strange turn. And the Republicans, the president today saying that, you know, what we all knew, that Paul Ryan was a traitor and a liar, and worked only for K Street, the Chamber of Commerce, the Business Roundtable, Wall Street, and he lied to the President of the United States. Imagine.
Shocker. I'm sure Americans who voted for Trump and just the regular Republican base, I'm sure, fainted when they heard that Paul Ryan promised something and then had no intention of doing it, like repealing and replacing Obamacare. Republicans, that leadership, had that format.
61 times those fools repealed it,
but
and then when it counted, they couldn't get together.
They did it because they knew it would not pass, and yet they took our votes and our money. So of course he's going to do the same thing to President Trump. This is their nature, and I'm glad the president finally is admitting it. But Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell have been the problems, and I think now that he realizes for the next 6 years, he must really understand that nobody there is going to be maneuvered into actually doing what's best for this country. He's going to have to do it on his own.
If we didn't have this president, Mark, the Republican Party would be woefully in deficit of a leader who cared about middle-class working men and women and their families and those who aspire to the middle class. I mean, he is the only hope for the American working man and woman and their families.
Well, we still have this deficit because outside of him, I don't know who's going to help us, and I don't see him getting a lot of support. And you've got the whole media.
He's got his pen. By God, he's got the Constitution on his side.
Yeah, but you get a whole media working against this cause. Anytime anybody goes on a Sunday show and says a wall is immoral, they should be questioned about that. There's a wall behind me. There's a wall over there. Chuck Schumer has a wall in his office, so walls in his house. Why anybody's allowed to...
So now you're asking the Democrats to actually make sense and speak the truth simultaneously. It's not going to happen.
We're okay with a fence, but not a wall. We'll build a concrete fence.
When it comes to media, though, let's remind everyone...
I like that, a concrete fence.
When it comes to the media, the Democrats have had a very good time over the last 6-8 months, and yet BuzzFeed and Huffington Post slashing jobs, eliminating Huffington Post.
Journalist jobs lost.
The entire opinion section at Huffington Post. Oh my gosh, how could that happen? And the entire national desk, I believe, at BuzzFeed. Look, I don't know what the legacy media is going to look like even in 2 to 3 years. So the president must realize that the American people, we don't go out there and have riots, right? We watch what's going on. We saw what was happening in Virginia. We know what New York and Cuomo have done with the abortion bill. We see Kamala Harris talking about getting rid of private insurance, the stuff about removing God from pledges. American people see that. We know. And if they think because we're not outside rioting that we're all quelled, they need to think again, because they're going to feel this, and the American people don't like what's happening.
Chuck Schumer apparently trying to carry out a coup against the President of the United States, suggesting that our intelligence chiefs stage an intervention against the President. The person who needs an intervention is Schumer, Pelosi, and these crazy damn socialists. They call themselves socialists. They're communists. They haven't got the guts to say what they are.
No, they just spent 15 years accusing the Intelligence Committee of lying, of being incompetent over WMD in Iraq. The president has accomplished one thing. He's got Democrats to pretend now that they like the CIA and the intelligence community.
Well, I'd like to know what they're hanging their hat on. What has the intelligence community in this country done correctly? And what is it that we're getting for the whatever the number is, their budget numbers? I mean, what is it? What's going on?
Yeah, it's very strange because
they're not stopping Russian meddling. They apparently didn't even know about it. They haven't been able to hold anyone to account for the cyber attacks on the Office of Personnel Management. 30 million federal employee names and data. And the list goes on. The constant attacks. And what are they doing? They're attacking Donald J. Trump, the President of the United States. And the Russians are having their way. The Chinese are having their way. We see in this list, the most recent intelligence report. Here it is, right here in front of me. This report, they have the power. They're there to carry out any cyber attack against our most important utilities in this country at any time. What the hell are they? An observer group? The intelligence community? They don't do anything.
It's the same group. We've had the intelligence breaches with China, North Korea, and Iran. This is the same group that after 17 years in Afghanistan, Al-Qaeda is still operating. The new guy, Donald Trump, is the one who deals with ISIS, is the one who's looking at this freshly and wants to make a difference.
You get the last word, partner.
Hey, there's two jobs of a president, peace and prosperity. We're doing great on both. Overall, it's a very successful presidency.
And I still can't figure out what the hell the DNI is talking about. What is he thinking about? But that's for another show. Thank you for being here on this show. Come back soon. We'll have that show. Up next, President Trump stands firm on his demands of Congress. No wall, no deal. Take that. We'll have more. Stay with us. We'll be right back. President Trump today addressed the national security crisis on our southern border. He placed little faith in the Congressional Conference Committee that's ostensibly, at least, trying to negotiate a deal.
We are building a lot of wall. You know, I'm not waiting for this committee. And I've told a lot of people I don't expect much coming out of the committee because I keep hearing the words that we'll give you what you want, but we're not going to give you a wall. And the problem is, if they don't give us a wall, it doesn't work. Without a wall, it doesn't work.
The U.S. Border Patrol conducting the largest seizure of fentanyl in U.S. history. In Arizona, 254 pounds of fentanyl, enough to kill 57 million Americans, discovered and confiscated. And the Trump administration says China trade talks are going in the right direction. The president saying there won't be a deal until he and Chinese President Xi Jinping are able to meet face to face. That's it for us tonight. We thank you for being with us. Tomorrow, Congressman Mark Green, Sarah Carter, Diamond and Silk among our guests. We hope you'll join us. A reminder to follow me on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Like me on Facebook. Follow me on Instagram at Lou Dobbs Tonight. Thanks for being with us. See you tomorrow. Good night from New York.
Baseball today. It's the American way. Of course, the next best thing to a seat in the stands is a seat in front of a 19-inch RCA Victor television. One more day to Labor Day weekend, the traditional occasion for tasty outdoor barbecues or picnics.
agree with all the obstacles and with all the enemies who are between me and...